Hello and welcome to Chargers Talk 4630. I'm your host, Stacey Mallory, and thank you all who take a little time out of your schedule to tune in. And before we get started, if I could remind you to go on to YouTube, go to search engine, type in three separate words, Chargers Talk 4630. Press the like button, give a thumbs up, hit the notification button on the right. And as always, it doesn't cost you one penny to subscribe. This way, you'll never miss a show or podcast. And also, your device, whether it's a tablet, phone, or computer, it will send you a notification as a reminder that either we are live on the air or we've just released the latest content. And also, you don't have to be a Chargers fan because everyone who listens and supports us is always welcome here. So again, welcome. The last time I did a Chargers podcast, it was actually right after that crazy Raiders game where the players had already checked out. Now there was no doubts that Brandon Staley clearly lost the locker room. After 45 years of supporting this team, that was the lowest point in my life as a Chargers fan. I take a lot of pride in representing the Chargers on my podcast, and I love to come on here and share and discuss different ideas with Charger fans. And what I wanted people to take from this podcast is to walk away saying, I like his content. I like how he represents the team. And as always, I learned something from his podcast. But as the season continued to spiral out of control, it brought out years of anger and frustration and emotions that spilled over into the podcast. And it was no longer a podcast, in my opinion, that released good content. It became a podcast that also got toxic, was full of anger, and there was nothing else to learn from it anymore. I'm sure it turned off some people. Hell, I was disappointed that I allowed emotions to take this in a direction that I wasn't happy about either. But I vowed to never do any other podcast until Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley was fired. A half hour later, after I finished that last podcast, there was breaking news. Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco was fired. And all I could say is thank you, Lord. I wish Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley the best moving forward in their futures, except when the Raiders and Chargers play on Sunday. I knew this pair was not good for this team, and this team would never win anything with these two. So I was cool about the firing, and I haven't done another podcast since then because I said I'm going to sit back, I'm going to wait and see what the Chargers do. I already know the narrative out there is that the Chargers owners are very, very cheap. I would say that's partly true and partly false, but not totally accurate. And let me explain myself. Remember 2 years ago with the free agency frenzy, when we went absolutely bananas, when the Chargers were spending money like crazy, they bought in Brandon Fox. We were happy about that. They bought in Kyle Vanoy. They traded for Khalil Mack. They also traded for Corey Linsley. They bought in J.C. Jackson from New England, Sebastian Joseph Day from the Rams. They made Justin Herbert at that time the highest paid quarterback in the league. You have Joey Bosa making over $30 million. Derwin James is still the highest paid safety. You have two receivers making $20 million. So the owners are not cheap. The owners spent a ton of money, but they continue to go cheap when it comes to paying the head coach. Just look at the other teams that is always in the playoffs or consistently having good seasons. Steelers with Mike Tomlin, 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, Chiefs with Andy Reid, Ravens with John Harbaugh. Look at the career that Bill Belichick had. Pete Carroll, Sean Payton, on and on and on. What do all of them have in common? They are leaders of men. We haven't had one of those since Marty Schottenheimer. That's way too long. You can't tell me we wouldn't have made a deep playoff run or Super Bowl with any of those coaches that I mentioned with the roster that we have. See, recycling these young, inexperienced coaches is just not working. It never has for us. So they spent money on the players, but not the coach. I was on the phone talking with a friend of mine last night, and my iPad and my phone was constantly buzzing. I was like, I get back to it. Just thinking maybe it's some emails or whatever, but it's constantly buzzing. I said, well, this got to be somebody really important that's trying to reach me. So let me take a minute and look and see, am I getting a bunch of emails or I'm getting a bunch of texts or whatever? So I did check. And again, it was breaking news. The Chargers have just signed Jim Harbaugh to a 5-year contract. Man, let me tell you something. That news made me feel like, wow, we finally got it. Dean Spanos finally got it. Dean Spanos has finally understood we need a leader of men to carry this organization. And we can't go cheap to bring in the guy we need. Jim Harbaugh is a winner. Harbaugh is a leader. Harbaugh is a team builder. Harbaugh has won everywhere he's been. He's everything any organization is looking for in a coach. He makes the Chargers relevant again. He brings respect and stability back to the Chargers, and the balance of power is starting to shift in the AFC West. I mean, the Raiders, for all that they've done, we're bringing in Tom Telesco, for hiring Antonio Pierce as their permanent head coach, and for the way that they finished their season, they take a back seat today to the Los Angeles Chargers. Their signings and everything that they've done, it was good, but their headlines has moved from the front page to the back page because the Chargers have signed Jim Harbaugh. That's just how huge this signing is for this team. That's how huge this signing is for the players. That's just how huge the signing is for this fan base. Jim's track record speaks for itself. We've always talked about how we are constantly outcoached every game. Well, Antonio Pierce, you can scream Raiders all you want. But the reality is, Justin Herbert and the Chargers are the biggest winners out of this move. And the Raiders and Antonio Pierce are the biggest losers out of this signing by the Chargers. Why? Because Antonio Pierce has got to match wits every year, twice a year, in the AFC West with Andy Reid, with Sean Payton, with Jim Harbaugh. I'm not taking shots at Antonio Pierce. I respect Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce is a Super Bowl champion himself, but he only has 9 games of experience as a coach, as an interim coach. No more needs to be said there when you got to go up against 3 powerful masterminds in that division. Jim Harbaugh has won everywhere, and the Chargers will be no different. Jim brings toughness, grit, leadership, experience as a player and as a coach. He will hold everyone accountable, and I love that all his teams he coached was built from the inside out by first putting together a dominant offensive line and a dominant defensive line. He wants, teaches, and preaches physicality. He knows how to win, and he knows what it takes to win, and I freaking love it. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I'm full of optimism. I am the happiest Charger fan this morning. I had friends that called me and texted me last night and said, Stacy, you're the only Chargers fan I've ever known all my life. I've seen how you suffered. I've seen the frustration and the aggravation that you had with this team. And you deserve to have a good team. You deserve to experience winning regularly in the regular season and in the playoffs. You deserve to experience what it feels like to win a Super Bowl, and you deserve to have a head coach of the caliber that Jim Harbaugh is. So it's time to save the pennies and get back to SoFi, because this is a huge deal. This is a power move, especially for this organization and for the AFC West. The Los Angeles Chargers have now put the AFC West and Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid on notice. The Chargers are back. The Chargers are back. And let me tell you something. Listen, it was hard to come on here and do a podcast with the way things were spiraling out of control. I just couldn't do it because I felt like I wasn't giving anything positive in the atmosphere through my podcast because of the anger and the frustration that you were constantly going through watching this team. I mean, they were bad. I mean, really, really bad. And I felt like all I was doing was coming on every week, just spewing rage and anger and frustration. And I didn't know if it turned people off. There are some people that probably liked it because I was relating to them what they were feeling as well. And there was some that probably said, man, in the beginning, when he first started doing his podcast, it was good. I got something from it. I can't wait to see what he put out next. And then you probably had some people that say, I can't do this, man. I mean, he's out of control. I'm not learning anything. And that's how I felt. I wasn't giving anything positive for people to take, and nothing that I left them with that make them want to come back, So I'm so excited and so happy about this. This is a huge deal. I've had friends that I sit down that are 49er fans. I have friends that are Giant fans, that are Cowboy fans, that are Eagles fans, a couple that are Green Bay, a few that are Denver, a few of them also that are Kansas City and Raiders fans. And they all sit down and they could talk about rings. They could talk about consistently being in the playoffs. I talked to a friend of mine earlier He's a diehard Steeler fan. And early in the season, when Steelers were struggling at the quarterback position, struggling to run the ball, struggling to try to stop anybody or score some points, they were coming to me with their frustration saying, yeah, Mike Tomlin is not relating to the younger players. He got to go. And I was telling them then, when we still had Brandon Staley, listen, man, you don't want to know what it's like. You have it really, really good. You guys are really, really spoiled to have a head coach that has never had a losing season in 17 years. You have no idea what it feels like to only get 4 or 5 wins every year, or to see your team competing every week and in position to win the game and then start getting out coached in the fourth quarter. You have no idea what it's like unless you lose Mike Tomlin, and then you get to see. The Steelers have only had 3 head coaches in their franchise, in their history: Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. That means they had to do a whole lot of damn winning over there. See, I don't know what that's like, but I could sit at the table with those guys now. No matter what team you got. You know why? Because I have a good team. We have a nice set of core players. This team going to look a lot different next year because of salary cap issues in the whole nine, but you got your left tackle in place. You got your stud quarterback in place. You still have Duran. I don't know about Khalil and Joey Bosa. Some of them guys may have to reconstruct their contracts if they want to come back. Then you got Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but we have pieces in place, and Jim Harbaugh is a team builder. Every team he went to, whether it was the 49ers, whether it was Stanford, San Diego State, whether it was the Michigan Wolverines, they were a bad team before he got there, and he left them much, much better when he left. And I'm hoping that he bring that same juice, that same excitement, that same grit, that same identity to the Los Angeles Chargers, and I know he do. We haven't had an identity in a long time. Since Marty Schottenheimer, we don't know who the hell we are. We don't know we want to be a run team. We don't want to be a passing team. We want a team that want to win with against defense. You want to have some balance, 60-40 defense, 60-40 offense. Like but Brandon Staley had us all over the place. We were all over the world with this dude trying to figure out what he want to do, and what we had no identity. I'm telling you now, he's going to bring a culture and an identity to the Los Angeles Chargers that we need so bad. And I can't wait. I can't wait. This is a good day if you're a Charger fan. Bad day if you're a Raider fan. Because Antonio Pierce, and I want to say this about Antonio Pierce. This is what kind of got me a little hot under the collar about Antonio Pierce. I looked at a little bit of his press conference with Tom Telesco yesterday. And he said, the first thing he said to Tom Telesco when he met him was, yeah, I put up like 70-something points. I start to go for 80, but I said, nah, I'm going to take it easy on, bragging about that. Listen, man, the Chargers had already checked out. We were looking forward to who we going to bring in as a head coach, GM, and what our team going to look like next year. You beat up on a team that you should have beaten like that. You guys were playing like if that one win will win you the division. You didn't do that with Justin Herbert on the field. We had a bunch of second and third stringers out there. You were supposed to do that. That's fine. I was good with that. We have the number 5 pick. What you got? Number 11, 12, 13, whatever. We got a franchise quarterback. What do you have? So, and you beat Kansas City when the game didn't mean anything to them. Pat Mahomes wasn't playing. You beat a Denver Broncos team where Sean Payton and Russell Wilson was going through so much, and he put Russell Wilson on the bench and had a third-string quarterback in there. I mean, if that's what you want to hang your hat on, Antonio Pierce, and be proud about that. And I mean, you're in your glory. You're the head coach. Congratulations to you and all that kind of stuff. But don't act like you stopped 3 teams from getting to the playoffs by knocking them off at full strength. Come on, man. When the season starts next year, the reality of it is you have 9 games of experience as an internal coach, right? And I'm glad that your Max Crosby's and all those guys came out and said, you're going to have to trade me if you don't bring him back. Great. Because the one thing I feared is that you guys didn't come to his defense and didn't tell the ownership that you wanted him. And Mark Davis would have gave him half ownership of the team to come and coach the team. Jim Harbaugh I'm speaking about. So you helped us out. You gave us a solid. I'm glad they all did that. But at the end of the day, here's the reality. I completely complained. I was frustrated and angry and pleaded on this podcast from week after week after week that Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco has to go. They were not winners. They didn't have winning mentality. They didn't know how to build the team. He missed more on his draft picks than he hit. And Staley, you just wasn't a coach. You should have never been a coach. So the reality of it is, if I and other people that are Charger fans can admit that we get out coached all the time, no matter what team we play, we always get out coached because Brandon Staley was just in over his head. If we can say that about Brandon Staley when he was the Chargers head coach, we can say that about you guys now, Raiders. We can say that about Antonio Pierce. You don't have 0 games of experience as a head coach. As an internal, you have 9 games. But that's going to go up against Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh. It's no comparison. Those guys are going to coach circles around you, Antonio Pierce. And if you're lucky to get to 8 wins, maybe you might last for another year and you get fired after 2. But if you get swept by the AFC West, I know you're going to get swept by us. But if you get swept by the AFC West and only win about 4 or 5 games, then you'll be relieved next year. But Jim Harbaugh going to still be there. Andy Reid going to still be there. And Sean Payton going to still be there. So calm down, pump the brakes, Antonio Pierce, on what you did to the Chargers. Pump the brakes, because at the end of the day, the Chargers and the Raiders have a seat on the couch. We were watching the first round and the second round and the third round, and we'll watch the Super Bowl together, okay? But the future in L.A. is nice. It is bright. I love it. I tell you, I love it. I can't wait. I wish the season was tomorrow. Dean Spanos, John Spanos, let me just say this. I gave y'all a lot of hell, but you guys deserve a standing ovation. A round of applause. I never thought you'd do it, but you got it together. And you recognize we need a true leader of men in here. We need somebody that could set the tone and could set a culture in this place and to give us an identity. And we ready to win. We ready to win right now. So with that being said, look, thank you guys. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. The Chargers is back. The Chargers is relevant. The Chargers is back. The Chargers is back. No more chargering no more. No more of that shit. You can't say that no more. You won't say, oh, it's half and half with fans. We hitting so far hard this year. You understand me? We hitting so far hard. I'm happy this morning. Thank you, Dean Spanos. Thank you, John Spanos. Welcome, Jim Harbaugh. Come on, man. Guide us. Take us, because we ready to go. See you on the next podcast.